Hey guys, it's game day. The Browns are going to be taking on the Raiders later on today, and I'm going to be talking about those matchups and those things with Jake Burns. But also, if you want to talk about the game during the game with me, then I want to make sure you guys join the Flick chat on the Flick app. Download the Flick app in your app store and look for the dog chat room. That's where I will be live chatting during the game. So if that's something you're interested in doing, live chatting with me during the game, then please make sure you download the Flick app and look for the dog chat room. I'll be there during the game. But before I get into this video, I have to show love to the Patreon supporters out there. Again, thank you guys for rushing to that Patreon page and really help supporting this channel in its time of need. You guys have been instrumental and a lifeline to this channel. So I just want to thank you guys there. And now it's time to give the dog checks out. The dog checks go to all the $10 and above Patreon patrons. And the first one goes to Greg Ehlers. Second one goes to Seth Harrison. Then you got Billy. We got Michael Holtnack, Jared Austin. That's a new one. Robert Gentry, Patrick F., Austin, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Jesus Serrano, the Picktown Browns backers, and Max Owl, Dojo, the old reliable. And you know I got to give you guys your dog check. One of the reasons that I tell you guys to be subscribed and stay notified to this channel, by the way, if you haven't done it, do it, is because I try to bring on guests who are experts in a lot of different areas and are interesting to bring on. And this is one of the more interesting ones that I found. Jake Burns is one of the best film breakdown guys on Twitter, especially when it comes to just focusing on the Browns. He has a great YouTube channel and website with the Orange and Brown Report. Please make sure you check those out. The links will be in the description. But I want to bring Jake Burns on. Jake, how you doing today, man?
I'm great, Quincy. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem. So the Browns are going in to play the Raiders today. Baker obviously coming off probably what I think is his best performance in his NFL career here. What do you glean from what he did that week that gives you positive reinforcement? And what do you still see that needs to be improved with Baker?
Good question. I think there's certainly elements of things that he struggles with that we didn't really see manifest itself a ton. So, it's not a secret he struggles in dirty pockets. Anytime he senses pressure, he kind of has that loses the calm among chaos that we want our quarterback to have, gets the happy feet that occasionally force him out of the pocket. So Cincinnati didn't generate much pressure, didn't make him come off his first read very much. And I know that it's been noted that he's one of the league's worst, might be the league's worst graded quarterback in Pro Football Focus metrics when he has to work from disguise coverage look. So anytime a safety is set up in too high, and a safety maybe is set up in single high and they rotate or change that look post snap. So Cincinnati didn't do a ton of that. They kind of defined their looks. They didn't change coverage looks pre to post as much as maybe Pittsburgh does, or some teams like even I would say the Colts do, some teams that he's seen and struggled a little bit against. So for the most part, what I liked, what I can take away from is a quarterback that looked confident going from his first read and letting it rip. I mean, some of the things we've seen with Baker this year is he can't find the right place to put his eyes right off the snap. So it's been really encouraging, or was really encouraging, for me to see him look confident, hit the top of his 3-5-step drops, have clear decisions to be made, and accurately delivering the football in the right situation. So that's what I take from it. A couple times, I think the number was 2 that they made him go off of his first read, still delivered the ball, which is important, to be able to do that in any shape or form, whether you're doing it frequently or not. You're encouraged to see that. But, yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's defense is it's a vanilla defense by nature. They don't have a ton of guys that they're comfortable with their scheme for the most part, so they don't do a ton of tweaking like you see Pittsburgh do with a group that's really comfortable. So he will have to do that. We know that. He'll have to do it against good teams the Browns hope to beat. But you take away really encouraging signs of getting his eyes where he needs to right off the snap, throwing accurately, feeling comfortable with his receiver group. And, for the first time in his career in a while, we saw him put a group on his back and lead multiple touchdown drives in the fourth quarter where he needed to get his team back up on top. So you feel good about those things, feeling like Baker maybe turned a little bit of a corner with some of those things in terms of clutch situations. So good to see.
One of the things I noticed in that game that I think I've been noticing a little bit, but it just the line hasn't held up in a way that it can really manifest itself into play, is Baker, especially in that game against Cincinnati, just did not roll out, or bail because sometimes he bails a lot when he has those clean pockets for no reason, just because he's kind of used to it. And it seemed like in that Cincinnati game, he finally got comfortable with the offensive line to a point to where he trusts that they're going to protect for him, and he's able to stay in the pocket longer and step up even sometimes and find his lanes, and that creates some plays for him. Is that an accurate assessment, or is it just kind of Cincinnati just wasn't getting pressure?
Well, I think it's a mix. I think there were a couple examples. If you look at the early fourth quarter over route that he threw to Rashard Higgins up the left sideline, I think he did a great job of stepping up, showing comfort like you're talking about. Even the touchdown ball to Donovan Peoples, once he was able to get the football out before high side pressure impacted the throw. So I think there was some of that. I certainly think that Cincinnati's not looking like, San Francisco 2019 pass rush by any stretch of the imagination, but they have some guys like Carl, dude. I know Carlos Dunlap was just traded, but at times he can really collapse pockets with the ridiculous length that he has and a long arm technique. So there were situations where I thought Old Baker would have taken off, but it did help that he was able to beat coverage by getting the football out quickly. That's a big part of quarterback play in the NFL, and why I'm encouraged, because his in rhythm throwing was not, from clean pockets too, was not where you want it to be. You can handle a quarterback who maybe doesn't handle dirty pockets very well or doesn't necessarily move read to read very well, but if you're able to overcome that by getting your eyes where they're supposed to be 70% of the time and throwing in rhythm and structure really well, you can overcome it. He wasn't doing enough of that, so there wasn't enough consistency there. I liked seeing that. That was important to me. But I do, to your original question, I do think there are some signs over the course of the last few weeks, if you omit Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh dominated the line of scrimmage. It's really tough to include that game looking at the big picture of how he's coming along this year. If you take out that game, which I know that's kind of dangerous to do, but if you take it out, I think there are some strides where he's cutting down that roll right, roll left stuff out of the pocket, especially from clean pockets. It was almost borderline laughable last year how much it was happening. It was a bad habit that was really developing and really started to become a part of who he was. I certainly listened to his quotes. You certainly listened to Van Pelt. Stefanski earlier in the year was such a big emphasis for them, and I've seen strides in sitting in the pocket. Now, the next step, in my opinion, is taking that ability to know that I need to stay in the pocket and being able to work calmly in the pocket and not panic in the pocket and drop your eyes. So that's the next step in the development of this whole process for Baker.
Definitely. Let's flip sides of the field here and talk about this Browns defense. We know Myles Garrett is great. He certainly showed that against Cincinnati. We know Denzel Ward is very good. And then we really don't know about everybody else on that defense. What do you see as the problem? A lot of people have focused on Andrew Sadeo. Is it really just that simple, or is there something more complicated going on with that defense?
Good question. I certainly think there are times when each position group is struggling, and the safeties have been well spoken for. They obviously have had to plug and play some guys. Ronnie Harrison is certainly the most consistent of the group in terms of reading, matching route concepts. He has a feel for that. I think they need to make sure he's on the field all the time. It feels like Joe Woods is committed to keeping him on the field all the time. They really do love Sendejo, man. And I've defended Andrew on some things that he deserves defended on, but there are too many examples of things that just can't be defended. And he's just a limited athlete. The scope of what the position requires, he's a limited athlete, and he's going to get beat more often than he's going to be able to hold up. Like, if you put Sendejo in slot coverage man-to-man on a corner route with CeeDee Lamb, it's not going to end well. It's just kind of facts. Like, that's just how it goes. But they say, can he overcome most of the other things on the field and be a positive contributor near the line of scrimmage? That's kind of what they're weighing. Now, I have questions about the scheme. Like, I think Terrence Mitchell's been relatively solid, a rough couple of weeks we've seen recently. They were getting picked on by Tavier Thomas, the slot corner, but I think Kevin Johnson's an improvement in that spot. Will keep getting better. They've had nice surprises by Malcolm Smith. B.J. Goodson at the linebacker position have kind of anchored that spot. They're just average, but these guys are average pass defenders. Like, they don't have the great feel you'd love to see in zone coverage. If you get the wrong guy matched up with the wrong person in man coverage, which can happen at any given time based on formation, you're putting yourself at a liability there. So, like, to me, it's Joe Woods. What's gotten them in trouble, especially if the Cincinnati game where they were just getting picked apart, they're too predictable in the way they're blitzing. Teams are noticing, hey, they're bringing two off a side, they're rolling coverage to the blitz side, and we're able to dump it off to the flat, or we're able to take this quick little settle route over the middle. He has to do some things, I think, that confuse quarterbacks' eyes a little bit more, and I certainly think they need some sort of interior and an opposite Myles pass rush that they can count on to get home in one-on-one matchups. Sheldon's been pretty, I would consider him above average. Larry's been disappointing in the pass rush aspect, and then they just have gotten nothing out of Olivier Vernon that reeks of anything consistent. So I don't know. I just think it's a team that's limited personnel-wise, with the defensive coordinator who's coming from situations in Denver and San Francisco where he had ridiculously good personnel and could do a little bit more of what he wanted to. So there's an adaptation going on between what Joe Woods wants to do and what Joe Woods is able to do. And I think that we'll maybe see it improve as time goes. But again, man, like they're not guys. The guys they have in there are an offseason way. I cannot say how much they miss Grant Delpit, a guy that they really were counting on to be a versatile coverage defender. And listen, you can blame whoever you want to and say you shouldn't count on rookies like that, but you draft him and you want him to play right away, especially a guy like Grant Delpit, who was viewed as a day one prospect who you got in day two, the same mold as you're seeing Antoine Winfield change the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. So to me, it's just they're limited personnel that they're trying to figure out how that personnel can work cohesively together. And then at the same time, it's trying to see how Joe Woods can make something stick for this group. So we should be worried. There's no evidence that says we shouldn't be worried, but for now, I'm kind of recognizing that teams are going to be able to pick them apart unless the Browns can create some pressure up front that causes a quarterback to get off his platform or get off of his first read, and you see that change. So luckily, Myles has been a wrecking ball. Luckily, you can count on Denzel to make some plays here and there, but they just need guys to step up, man. Start making plays and start taking some risks. Like I would prefer to see some guys jump some routes, and if you get beat on a double route, so be it. They're just kind of catching in their reactionary football instead of being proactive. So I would like to see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, see, I think the biggest problem with the defense is that you have a Myles Garrett who has 9 sacks, 37 pressures through 37 games. If you look at the rest of his help on that defensive line, it's 5 sacks and 36 pressures with everybody combined, which is not good. You don't want Myles being more productive than everybody else who's on that defensive line. I know Myles is great, but that's not a great situation to be in. So do you see in some way, because I think it's too late for the Browns to get like a real running mate for Myles Garrett. That times came and went, and the offseason was really your opportunity to do that. Do you see the Browns maybe trying to get some depth for that defensive line to help Myles be able to get some rest? Because another big problem I've noticed is that it's very obvious when Myles has to get his 1 or 2 drives off because the defensive line gets absolutely no push. So do you think maybe getting some depth, maybe making that gap a little bit smaller so you can have Myles be more well-rested into the fourth quarter is something the Cleveland Browns are going to look into doing?
I mean, I certainly think in a perfect world they would. I know that they brought in Adrian Claiborne with the idea that he could be a little bit of that for Myles, but since you've seen such a weak pass rush opposite him, you're forcing Adrian Claiborne to come onto the field to give them some sort of opportunity, but Myles still has to be on the field because if you put Adrian Claiborne, Olivier Vernon, and Porter Gustin on the field at the same time, you're running the risk that you're just not going to get any pressure whatsoever. So, listen, there's guys out there. There's Cam Wake, who's still a street free agent. There are some guys they could go out and trade for. I mean, some guys we've seen come and go, but I don't know. I've always thought that the Browns were going to look at drafting a defensive end in the first or second round to sort of supplement Myles. I think they're expecting to get more out of Olivier Vernon, who's I'm presuming he's beat up. I mean, I know he's been dealing with injuries. They need I don't have the fix. I don't know what it is. I think you're right that they're probably looking. I think they should be approaching every possible thing, whether that's calling up the Jets to talk to Quinn and Williams about that situation, about whether he's available, what sort of return it takes to get that. They have to start generating pressure from other places than where 95's lined up. Because if you watch these games, they're sending running backs to chip. They're sending tight ends to chip. They're sending extra help all the time, and it is leaving one-on-one matchups almost across the board that you need those guys to win a little bit more. And you also, too, need coverage to be a little bit more bold and in your face so that you have a little bit, that extra second and a half to get home. So you need to start mixing the coverage with, hey, we're not getting enough pressure. Let's put our defensive backs in a position to make a quarterback have to hold on to the ball just a little bit longer to give some of these guys a chance. Because Sheldon has it. There's no doubt about it that he has the ability to get it done. I mean, Larry's kind of spotty here and there, Ogunjobi, but he's got the repertoire to be able to add something and contribute on the inside. They need guys to just step up to the plate. I think that there's the defense as a whole. They have to look in the mirror and say, man, we're not getting it done. We got an offense that's putting together game after game after game, and we're not getting it done. And it's got to come down to who wants to step up and make plays. I've been encouraged from Ronnie Harrison. I think Sheldon's been hustling his butt off all year, but they need more guys in the second tier. You talk about Denzel, talk about Myles on the first tier. They need more second tier guys to step up to take this team. You got to keep teams 21 or below, man. Give up 21, that's fine. Our offense can overcome, get to 24, 27, 31, whatever. You got to look at the goal is for this defense to say 21 and below every week. That's what they got to try to hit.
Definitely. Speaking of the offense being able to put up points, obviously Odell being injured is going to be a huge factor in that. I know there's a school of thought that thinks that Baker is better somehow without Odell. I don't know if I necessarily have enough information to buy that case yet, but one of the things I think is going to become a factor without Odell is against some of your better teams, you're not really going to have that deep threat option. You don't have that burner that Odell is on this roster. Donovan Peoples-Jones might be the fastest guy on the roster. He's not a slow guy, but he's a 4.4 guy in the NFL. It's not necessarily somebody you want to be the consistent deep threat. Do you see the Browns doing something to get a deep threat there, or how are they going to manage with having what is now a relatively slow wide receiving core?
Good question again, man. Like, I think that there's opportunities to go get some guys. Like Damian Ratley's a practice squad guy that they could bring back in who would be relatively familiar with some of the things they like to do. There are guys who can lift the lid. John Ross could be out there. You could honestly go get Brashad Perriman if you want to, who had a nice little run with Cleveland in 2018, if you're willing to pony up a little bit. Do they think Taywan Taylor's a guy who can help them out in that regard, who's on the roster already? I don't know. Do they think Kadarius Hodge is fast enough? There's a lot of feeling out at the wide receiver position. We've seen some ludicrous rumors over the past few days that they're out and hunting for all these big names, and I just don't buy that. I don't think they want to dump double-digit contract, a guy making $10 million or more over the next few years unless they're a really young player that they can build around, because they have some tough decisions coming up at wide receiver as it is with Odell and Jarvis and so on and so forth. So to dump another one like that when you have a really good wide receiver class coming in doesn't totally make sense to me. I don't really roll with that. So I think they might add somebody that we don't expect, or somebody that's a low-level name, like you said, that can lift the lid off the defense and maybe go get a nice little post route over the top for 55, a la what Perriman did in 2018 on that early game Carolina game deep ball catch. Like, you need a guy like that. I think that part certainly has a role in this offense. So, listen, I'm with you. There are elements to the OBJ thing that are certainly interesting, and you need more data with it. And it's silly to just believe you could lose a talent like that and you could become that much better as an offense. I need, like I said, I need to see more data with it. But I think they definitely need a guy who can take over the role. You're not going to fill OBJ's shoes with one person. It's just not going to happen. But you can put a Rashard Higgins on the field who can catch back shoulder throws and has a nice catch radius similar to Odell's, in the right place at the right time. And then you can fill the speed role with somebody else at the right time too. So in my opinion, I would probably try to go get somebody. Doesn't have to be somebody great. Somebody, like I said, I'm a believer that Damian Ratley's a really nice lid lifter for a defense, a guy who can just, hey, man, take off on a post, take off on a 9, take off on a corner, and lift the lid off this coverage right here. Maybe you get the ball 1 out of 10 times, but it doesn't matter. He has a role. He's on the roster. He's in the league. He's feeling good, and you get maybe 20 targets the rest of the season. But you need that guy. So I would be, in my opinion, I would go out and try to pursue somebody like that. But I would not expect from the fan base to think that they're going to go get somebody splashy. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is kind of the run game, because we saw this run game kind of carried this team early on. Even after Nick Chubb went down in the Cowboys game, they still kind of carried this team a little bit. But then you saw in Indy, not really there. Pittsburgh, definitely not there. And even this game against Cincinnati, it was there in moments, but it wasn't there like it's been at the beginning of this season. Is that just Nick Chubb not being out there? Obviously, Nick Chubb is probably one of the best 5 running backs in football, so you're going to miss him. Or is that Wyatt Teller not being out there as well, who was one of the best 5 guards in football when he left out?
Yeah, I think there's also data. You talked about Odell and Baker and all that. There's the data out there with 5.3 yards a carry when Odell's on the field and 3.9 when he's off the field. There's an element to 2 high safety looks that you get with Odell because teams are afraid of being beat over the top. Like, that's the real thing. The Bengals were rolling a safety down in the box, whether it was Von Bell or Jesse Bates, pretty frequently, putting that 8th man in the box. Now, I will say this, that the difference between a 5-yard run and a 15, 25, 30-yard run in the NFL is sometimes microcosmic. It's very small. And it's one little slight cut here. It's just a little beat of patience right here or there. If you think about that Dearness Johnson run to close out the Colts game, just a little bit of hesitation he shows at the line of scrimmage allows the looping jet receiver to come over and go all the way around and crack back on the corner, and it springs it for a 28-yard run. I thought the Cincinnati game, they blocked pretty well. I thought they would put themselves in some positions to have some really nice runs, but Cincinnati just tackled really well. So I think that there are opportunities at hand where I don't think that they're necessarily running poorly. The schemes aren't poor. The blocking isn't poor. I think they're just a little bit off. They maybe didn't make a man miss where they normally do. Kareem is dealing with a couple banged up little injuries. Obviously, he's carried the load here early in the season. And then, you get Nick back, you get Wyatt Teller back after the bye week. The bye week is so huge for this team. You get those guys back, you get a fresh perspective. And they're really, you think about the Colts, very good run defense. Listen, as far as filling gaps from a 4-3 look is as good as anybody I've ever seen. Pittsburgh, extremely tricky team to run against with their two wide outside linebackers that hold the edge ridiculously well, and they make you switch up your scheme. And I think Stefanski will be better prepared for those guys schematically later in the season. But I didn't think the Cincinnati situation, I didn't think that it was a bad run game effort. I just think there were a couple little tweaks off here and there, and they were throwing a lot because they had to keep coming back. They were down 17-10.5, had to keep throwing the ball a little bit to get back into it. So I'm still encouraged. I think they can still run the football well. And they're running into a slew of defenses coming up that they can really, really run the football on. So I would expect against Oakland, not a very great box team to really be a heavy emphasis on the wide variety of run schemes that we became really accustomed to early in the year.
All right, guys, this is Jake Burns. Jake, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm at Twitter, Jake_Burns18 on Twitter, and then I do tons of stuff for the Orange and Brown Report. I do all the film room stuff there. We do Quarterback Live on the OBR YouTube channel that you can find. We break down Baker Mayfield's throws, his 15, 20 throws a game, and talk about those. Those can be found there. And then I do the OBR Film Breakdown Twitter handle too. Just kind of some different stuff. Always talking about film. I try to cover it from that angle as best I can, man.
All right. Well, thank you for being on today, man. And again, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.